This is ABC Radio Brisbane.
What puts a smile on your face when you're on the streets of Brisbane? What makes you happy in a city from a design perspective? Is it green space? Is it being able to walk your dog and see some trees? Is it being able to walk along the river in an afternoon watching the sun set over the city? They are just some of the questions that researchers at the Queensland University of Technology have been looking to answer, trying to find out what makes a happy city. Sofie Pringle is an architect and PhD researcher at QUT. Sophie, have you peered into that crystal ball and found the answer?
I don't know if I found the absolute answer or peered into the crystal ball, but I've certainly used some research and gathered, observation data to try and give us a bit more information into how we can make our cities a little bit happier. So I guess it's a pretty contentious issue, really. The idea of happiness is, a bit of an elusive concept, but our research in terms of what we look at is actually happiness in relation to the built environment.
And Sophie, you said that you've turned to some observational data, and that's from Instagram, am I right?
Yeah, correct. So we kind of tried to use a different method of how to approach how can we actually get data from Instagram, which kind of associates people's self-reported happiness without us actually, having to ask them in the first instance.
And so you drilled down into some hashtags. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, we did. So the hashtags that we kind of used, there was a whole bunch of ones, and we kind of drilled it down further and looked at hashtags such as happy city, city of happiness, urban happiness, just to name a few. And these hashtags kind of let us figure out what kind of pictures people were associating with this idea of happiness in the cities. And then from there, we were able to really start to pull out the themes that were emerging from the images through the content. So we looked at the design features within those images and started to see that there were consistent themes appearing, like open space, views to water, heritage buildings, that kind of stuff.
So the photographs that have been uploaded to Instagram that contain a hashtag that says city happy or city of happiness, as you say, and then you looked at those images to work out what people were reporting to their friends was making them happy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's probably a much better way to explain it. We essentially did that. So in order for us to understand what people were associating with happiness and how they were reporting back to their friends and, on the image sharing platform Instagram, that kind of gave us the ability to observe objectively to say, okay, well, we can see that, quite a few hundred people are doing this. And what was interesting is that these images were coming from around the world. There was no geographical limitation to this, and we started to pull out reoccurring items. So things such as water, for instance, in the built environment, people were tagging with happy city, or views to the city, or human scale buildings. So, buildings of a particular height, people tended to tag those buildings with happy city, especially buildings with, more of a character type feel, more historic, more materiality and, those kinds of features.
Yeah, and less of the concrete jungle sky rises.
Yeah, that's right. And of course the age-old, vegetation, green space, parks kind of stuff kept cropping up too, which is great to see.
And because, Sophie, there's already been a bit of research around urban environments and how they have an impact on our well-being, our mental health. You're just trying to add a bit of extra data around the features that we look for that'll put a smile on our face. How do you think Brisbane rates against, the fact of you've put this data together, you've seen the features that people like. How does Brisbane compare?
Well, so from the first phase, which was through the Instagram, we then used that to kind of validate in the next phase, which we called the pilot study. So we took it online and we did a questionnaire with a number of people in Brisbane. So the pilot study kind of told us that people liked particular areas in Brisbane as we used example images around Brisbane, which were exhibiting these characteristics. So one pretty iconic area in Brisbane that people felt happy in was, of course, South Bank.
Yeah, because the ABC's here.
That's because we're here, Sophie.
Is that right?
Yeah, it must have been. Look, they must have heard about the breakfast show and they wanted to be outside. Look, I could definitely attest to the fact that it's got some great facilities there. It's it's got ample public open space. It's got plenty of different types of activities that you can do there. It's got views to water. You're not overpowered by, I guess, and I say overpowered because that was the kind of responses we got back from the built form being not too high. People felt more secure and I guess more comfortable and happy in environments where there wasn't too much density. So, South Bank was one example of that. The other areas were Tenerife and Kangaroo Point. So people tend to really enjoy and are much happier in environments where there are, a mix of these kinds of stuff. So, the next step is through the PhD research is trying to actually unpack, the key ingredients of this, I guess, going forward in various areas of density. So we'll be looking at high density, medium density and low density.
So that's where it goes next from a design perspective. Sophie, it's such interesting research and, it backs up what a few people might think. You mentioned those suburbs. They also are close to the water. They've got a few trees, a bit of green space around, and it might be an argument to convert King George Square back to parkland as it once was before they put in all those concrete tiles. Hey, Sophie, thanks for joining us this morning.
That's all right. Thank you so much for having me on.
Sofie Pringle, she's an architect and PhD researcher at the Queensland University of Technology.